I was 7 when I first heard about Thetans. My mother held my hand as we walked up the steps of the pristine building in downtown Los Angeles. The marble facade gleamed in the California sun, making me squint. A blue sign with 8 points stretching toward infinity marked our destination. "You're going to learn how to be clear," she whispered, squeezing my fingers. "How to be truly free." 20 years later, I still remembered that promise. Freedom, clarity, purpose. The church had given me all of these things, or so I believed. I'd risen through the ranks quickly, dedicated myself completely. At 23, I was the youngest Level 4 auditor at our org, responsible for helping others confront their reactive minds and achieve spiritual advancement. My life followed a perfect routine. Wake at 5:30 a.m. Cold shower, pressed white shirt and black slacks. Breakfast with exactly 17 minutes allocated. Study period until 8 o'clock a.m. Then 12 hours of auditing sessions, processing others through the technology that would save humanity. Everything measured, everything tracked, everything documented. I never questioned it, not once in 20 years, until the day I met him. "Trainee auditor reporting for certification course, sir." I looked up from my paperwork, annoyed at the interruption. The mid-year intensive courses always brought an influx of new faces, usually wide-eyed newcomers whose enthusiasm would need tempering with discipline. I'd been assigned to evaluate 3 new auditors this week, and this was the second. "You're late," I said without looking up. "Punctuality is—" My words caught in my throat when I finally raised my eyes. He stood at rigid attention, as protocol demanded. Black slacks, spotless white shirt, standard-issue blue tie. His posture was perfect, but there was nothing standard about his face. Strong jaw tensed with nervousness, tousled dark hair that somehow escaped the severe styling most of us adopted, and eyes, deep brown eyes, that seemed to hold something back, something that the church had not yet managed to audit away. "Essential," I finished, swallowing hard. "Punctuality is essential to the tech." "Yes, sir. It won't happen again." His voice was deeper than I expected. "Steady." I gestured to the chair across from me. The auditing room was small, deliberately so. 2 chairs facing each other. A small table between them holding the e-meter, our electropsychometer that measured thought energy and emotional responses. No windows, neutral walls, nothing to distract from the process. "Your name?" I asked, though I'd already memorized his file. "James Ellery, sir. Transferred from Sacramento org." I nodded. "I'm Daniel Fletcher. You'll address me as auditor during sessions. Outside of this room, sir, is sufficient." "Yes, sir." I handed him the metal cans connected to the e-meter. "Hold these. I need a baseline reading." Our fingers brushed as he took the cylinders. A small, insignificant touch, the kind that happens a dozen times daily. Yet I felt a jolt travel up my arm that had nothing to do with the e-meter's electrical current. I adjusted the dials on the machine, watching the needle. It should have been steady for someone at his level. Instead, it jumped and swung wildly. "You seem to be carrying some charge," I said, using the technical term for emotional disturbance. "Were you running before arriving?" "No, sir." His eyes met mine, and for a second, just 1 second, I saw the corner of his mouth twitch upward. Not quite a smile. Something closer to recognition. The needle jumped again. I glanced down at his file, breaking the eye contact that felt suddenly dangerous. "You've been in the church your entire life?" "Yes, sir. Born into it, like you." I hadn't told him I was born into the church. He must have read my file too. "And you're pursuing the auditor track rather than Seor Bakast, referring to the church's elite order where members signed a billion-year contract of service." "I believe I can help more people through auditing, sir. Getting them up the bridge." Standard answer, perfectly acceptable. Yet something in his tone made me wonder if he actually believed it. I spent the next hour drilling him on the basics. His technical knowledge was flawless. His delivery was precise. But there was something else, something in the way he watched me when he thought I wasn't looking. Something that made the room feel smaller than it was. When our session ended, I made a note in his file. Technically proficient, requires further evaluation for emotional suitability. I told myself it was because of the e-meter readings, not because I wanted to see him again. The advanced org facility operated like clockwork. Every hour scheduled, every movement monitored. Security cameras in hallways, dining halls, study rooms. Senior members who appeared randomly to observe. Ethics officers who could pull anyone for questioning at any time. We were taught it was for our protection, to ensure standard tech was maintained with no deviation, to keep suppressive influences away from those advancing toward clarity. I'd never felt trapped by it before. "Fletcher, wait up!" I turned to see James jogging to catch up with me in the corridor between study halls. It had been 3 days since our first evaluation session. I'd seen him at morning muster and meal times, but we hadn't spoken. "Trainee Ellery," I acknowledged, keeping my voice neutral. 2 Sea Org members passed us, their blue uniforms a reminder that we were always being observed. "I've been assigned to Practical Drill Group C," he said when they'd passed. "Your group." Something fluttered in my chest. They suppressed it immediately. "That's correct. 1,300 hours in room 17. "I know, sir. He hesitated. "I wanted to thank you for the evaluation notes. Your feedback was helpful." We were standing too close in the narrow hallway. I could smell the standard issue soap on his skin, see the tiny scar above his right eyebrow. I took a step back. "Just following protocol, trainee." He nodded, but his eyes said something else. Something that made my heart rate increase in a way that would definitely register on an e-meter. "See you at 1300, sir." He turned and walked away. I watched him go, noticing the way other trainees nodded respectfully as he passed. He'd already built rapport with them. Unusual for a transfer. "Daniel." I flinched at the voice behind me. Turning, I found myself facing Senior Ethics Officer Wyland. "Sir," I said, straightening my posture. His cold gray eyes studied me. "You're working with the Sacramento transfer?" "Yes, sir. He's in my evaluation group." "Keep a close eye on that one. His previous org reported some irregularities." My stomach tightened. "Irregularities, sir?" "Nothing to concern you yet. Just observe and report. Anything unusual, anything that doesn't align with tech." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "We're counting on you, Daniel. You're one of our most promising." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." Wyland walked away, leaving me with a chill that had nothing to do with the building's aggressive air conditioning. Irregularities. The word could mean anything from simple tech violations to being declared a suppressive person, excommunicated, cut off from all contact with church members, including family. I tried to imagine James as dangerous as someone working against the church. The thought wouldn't take hold. Instead, I remember the way his eyes had met mine, that almost smile. For the first time in my life, I considered not following an order, not reporting. The thought was so foreign, so frightening, that I immediately went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. This was dangerous thinking, the kind of thinking that got people assigned to the Rehabilitation Project Force, where they would spend months or years doing physical labor and intensive auditing to correct their counterintentions. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. Same face I'd always had. Same shortcut brown hair, same green eyes, same determined jaw. I didn't look different, but something inside me had shifted, ever so slightly, like the first hairline crack in a dam. Room 17 was set up for training routines, the drills we used to perfect our auditing technique. 6 pairs of chairs faced each other across the sterile space. The overhead lights were harsh, designed to eliminate shadows and secrets. I arrived 15 minutes early to review the day's program. Upper-level TRs focusing on maintaining presence and control during stressful auditing sessions. Essential skills, but also some of the most intense drills we practiced. The trainees filed in at precisely 1,300 hours. James was last, cutting it so close that I felt a flash of irritation. He caught my eye and nodded slightly as he took his place. "Today, we'll be working on TR0 bullbait," I announced. For those unfamiliar, this drill requires you to maintain complete presence while your partner attempts to make you react. No smiling, flinching, blinking, or breaking eye contact. Any reaction means starting over. I demonstrated with one of the senior trainees, sitting perfectly still while she made faces and shouted provocations at me. After 5 minutes without so much as a twitch from me, I called time. Pair up, I instructed, experienced auditors with trainees. The group quickly formed pairs, leaving James without a partner, which meant, "Sir," he said, approaching my position at the front of the room. "Seems I'm with you." I nodded stiffly. "Take your seat." We positioned our chairs facing each other, knees almost touching in the prescribed position. James sat with perfect posture, hands on his thighs, eyes already fixed on mine. "Begin," I said. For the first minute, we simply stared at each other. Tiaro started with confrontation, the ability to be there comfortably and confront another person. His gaze was steady, but I caught the subtle rise and fall of his chest as he controlled his breathing. Then I moved to the bull baiting phase. My job was to provoke him, to find his buttons and push them until he could no longer be provoked. "Your file says you've never made it through a full bull bait session," I said sharply. 3 attempts, 3 failures. Not very impressive for someone who thinks he can be an auditor. No reaction. His eyes remained locked on mine. "Maybe Sacramento sent you here because they couldn't fix you," I continued, raising my voice slightly. "Maybe they know you're not cut out for the tech." Still nothing. The room had gone quiet around us as the other pairs paused to watch. This was unusual. Typically, I would circulate and observe rather than participate directly. I leaned forward, bringing my face closer to his. "What are you hiding, trainee Ellery? What irregularities am I going to find when I start digging?" There, the smallest flicker in his left eye. "Attell, your ethics officer warned me about you," I said, my voice low and intense. "Said you were trouble. Maybe I should just recommend your reassignment now, save everyone the time." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but his gaze never wavered. I switched tactics, moving from verbal jabs to unpredictability. I clapped my hands loudly near his face. I stood abruptly and circled his chair. I whispered directly into his ear, close enough that my breath moved the hair at his temple. "I know what you're doing here." Nothing broke his composure. After 15 minutes, 3 times longer than any other pair, I called time. "Session complete," I said, my voice oddly hoarse. "Well done, trainee." A thin sheen of sweat had formed on his brow, but he'd maintained perfect TR0. James nodded once, a gesture so subtle that only I could have seen it. "Switch positions," I instructed the room. "Trainees will now bullbait their partners." James and I changed places, though I remained in the instructor role. "You may begin when ready, trainee." He studied me for a long moment. The other pairs had already started, their voices creating a strange cacophony around us. But between James and me, there was only silence and the electric sensation of being truly seen. "What are you afraid of, Auditor Fletcher?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. My breath caught. This wasn't how bullbaiting typically began. It was too direct, too personal. "Because I can see it in you," he continued, still quiet enough that only I could hear. "The fear. Every time you look at me. Every time our eyes meet." He leaned slightly forward. "What exactly are you afraid will happen?" My heart hammered against my ribs. I maintained my expression through years of training, but inside, alarms were blaring. He was seeing through me somehow, past all my careful barriers. "I've watched you," he said. "The perfect church member, the model auditor. Always exactly where you're supposed to be. Doing exactly what you're told." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Don't you ever wonder if there's more? If all of this—" He made a subtle gesture that encompassed the room, the building, possibly our entire lives. "Is just a cage we've been trained not to see." I felt something inside me lurch toward his words, drawn like a compass needle to true north. It terrified me. "That's enough, trainee," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. The corner of his mouth twitched upward. "I made you react," he said. "Shall we start over?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. He was right. I'd broken TR0. I'd reacted not just with my voice, but with my entire being. "Class dismissed," I announced to the room, standing abruptly. "Continue practicing in pairs. Self-monitor and report completion to your supervisors." I left without looking back, feeling James's eyes on me all the way to the door. I couldn't sleep that night. After lights out at 2200 hours, I lay in my narrow bunk, staring at the ceiling, replaying the training session in my mind. James's words echoed. "Don't you ever wonder if there's more?" The truth was, I hadn't. Not until now. At midnight, I gave up on sleep. Slipping on shoes and a robe over my standard-issue pajamas, I decided to go to the small kitchen area for tea. It wasn't strictly prohibited to be up after hours for something like this, though it would require explanation if I encountered security. The corridors were dimly lit and silent. My footsteps seemed unnaturally loud on the polished floors. I passed the ethics office, the qualifications division, the success center, all dark and empty. The building felt different at night, less like a spiritual center and more like what it really was, a former hotel converted to institutional use. As I rounded the corner to the kitchen, I froze. Someone was already there, a silhouette visible through the frosted glass of the door. I considered turning back, but something made me push forward. James stood at the counter, his back to me, measuring tea into a mug. He wore the same style of robe as mine, but his pajama pants were non-regulation, dark plaid instead of the standard white. "Couldn't sleep either?" I asked. He turned, unsurprised, as if he'd been expecting me. "Sir?" he acknowledged, then gestured to the electric kettle. "Tea?" I nodded, moving into the small space. There was barely room for 2 people between the counter and the small table with 4 chairs. "Chamomile, if they have it." "They do." He reached past me to the tea caddy, his arm brushing mine. Neither of us acknowledged the contact, but I felt it like a brand on my skin. He prepared a second mug in silence, then slid it across the counter to me. Our fingers didn't touch this time. I wasn't sure if I was relieved or disappointed. "I should report your non-reg pajamas," I said, attempting a light tone. He smiled, a real smile this time, not the careful almost there expression I'd glimpsed before. "But you won't?" "How can you be so sure?" "Because you're here at midnight, having tea with me instead of writing up an ethics report about today's session." He was right, and we both knew it. I'd broken protocol by not documenting his unorthodox bull-baiting approach. By all rights, I should have reported him immediately after class. "Why did you transfer from Sacramento?" I asked, changing the subject. He leaned against the counter, blowing gently on his tea. Official reason or real reason? The question itself was a test. In the church, there was no real reason apart from what was officially stated. To suggest otherwise was to admit to counterintentions. "Both," I said, surprising myself. He studied me over the rim of his mug. "Officially, I was transferred to gain experience at an advanced org in preparation for flag training." "And unofficially?" He hesitated, eyes scanning my face as if searching for something. "I asked for the transfer after seeing your picture in the advanced auditor profile section of our org's leadership board." My mug froze halfway to my lips. "What? You want the truth, right? That's why you're here at midnight, breaking small rules and asking dangerous questions." He set his mug down and stepped closer to me, close enough that I could feel the heat from his body. "I saw your face, and I knew I had to meet you. I knew you were like me." "Like you how?" My voice was barely audible. Someone who follows all the rules because they're afraid of what might happen if they stopped. Someone who does everything perfectly because they think it will fill the emptiness. His eyes held mine, unblinking. Someone who's never felt at home in their own life. I should have walked away. I should have reported him immediately. Instead, I whispered, "How could you possibly know that from a photograph?" "I didn't," he admitted. "Not for certain. Not until I saw you in person. Not until right now." We stood in silence, the space between us charged with something I had no name for, something I had never felt before. "We should go back to our rooms," I finally said. He nodded, but neither of us moved. "There is a place," he said quietly, "where the cameras don't reach, on the roof, behind the HVAC units. You can see the whole city from there." It was an invitation, a dangerous one. "Tomorrow night," he continued, "after final check, if you want to continue this conversation." I knew I should say no. I knew I should report him immediately. Instead, I found myself nodding once, a gesture so small that only someone watching closely would have seen it. He smiled again, and something inside me unfolded like a flower opening to the sun. "Good night, Daniel," he said, using my first name for the first time. "Good night, James." I watched him leave, carrying his mug with him. Only after he'd gone did I realize I was trembling. The next day passed in a blur. I went through my routines mechanically, eating meals I couldn't taste, conducting auditing sessions where I heard myself saying all the right words while my mind was elsewhere. James and I passed each other twice in the corridors. Each time we exchanged the proper greetings as if nothing had changed. But something had, and we both felt it. I could see it in the way his eyes lingered on mine for a fraction of a second too long. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt more alive than I had in years. Senior Ethics Officer Weiland called me into his office in the afternoon. My stomach dropped when I saw the summons on my schedule, but his questions were routine. Updates on the training group, progress reports on specific cases. He made no mention of James or any midnight encounters. "You seem distracted, Daniel," he noted as our meeting concluded. "Is everything all right?" "Just tired, sir," I lied. "I've been having trouble sleeping." He studied me with those cold gray eyes. "Perhaps you should schedule a light auditing session. Clear out whatever's bothering you." "I'll consider it, sir." "Thank you." As I rose to leave, he added, "How is the Sacramento transfer working out?" My heart skipped. "Trainee Ellery. He's technically proficient. No issues to report." Weiland nodded slowly. "Good. Keep me informed." I felt his eyes on my back as I left the office. Night came both too slowly and too quickly. After lights out, I lay in bed fully clothed under my blanket, watching the minutes tick by on my regulation digital clock. At 23:45, I slipped out of bed and into the corridor. The route to the roof access was through the maintenance sector, an area I rarely visited. I followed the directions James had whispered to me during a brief encounter in the dining hall. 3rd floor, east wing, door marked mechanical access only. The door was unlocked, as he'd promised it would be. Beyond it, a narrow staircase led upward. I climbed quickly, heart pounding, half expecting alarms to sound at any moment. The roof was flat and sprawling, dotted with ventilation systems and satellite dishes. The night air was cool, a welcome change from the building's carefully controlled environment. Los Angeles spread out before me, a glittering expanse of light stretching to the horizon. "You came!" I turned to find James emerging from behind an air conditioning unit. The moonlight caught the planes of his face, making him look otherworldly. "I shouldn't be here," I said. "But you are." He stepped closer. "That's the choice that matters." He was right. In a life where every minute was scheduled, every action monitored, this small act of rebellion was momentous. I had chosen to come here, to this unmonitored space, to be with him. "Why am I here, James?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the hum of the ventilation systems. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he led me to a spot behind the largest HVAC unit, where someone, him, presumably, had arranged 2 milk crates as makeshift seats. We sat facing each other, knees almost touching, reminiscent of our training positions, but now without witnesses or regulations. "I haven't felt like myself in years," he finally said, his voice low and intense. "Not until I met you." The words hung between us, heavy with meaning. This was the conversation I'd both dreaded and longed for. "I don't understand what's happening," I admitted. "I've never felt this way before." "Because they don't let us feel," he said. The auditing, the processing, it's all designed to flatten emotion, to file down the rough edges that make us human. That's not true, I protested, but the words sounded hollow even to me. The tech helps us clear away negative emotions, engrams that hold us back. And what's left, Daniel? What's left after you've cleared away everything they tell you is wrong or dangerous? His eyes caught the distant city lights. I've been audited since I was 5 years old. Every fear, every doubt, every moment of anger or passion, all of it treated like a disease to be cured. I wanted to argue, to defend the system I dedicated my life to. But something stopped me. If that's how you feel, why are you here? Why become an auditor? He looked away, out toward the city. My mother is still in. My younger sister. If I leave, I'll never see them again. But I thought, maybe from the inside, I could make some difference. Help people without stripping away everything that makes them who they are. A noble goal, but an impossible one. The tech was standardized precisely to prevent individual auditors from applying their own interpretations. And you? He asked. Why did you become an auditor? I believed in it, I said simply. I still do. Do you? He turned back to me, eyes searching mine. Then why are you here breaking rules with me? I had no answer that made sense within the framework of my beliefs. Nothing that wouldn't force me to examine contradictions I'd spent years ignoring. I don't know, I finally whispered. He reached out slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, and placed his hand over mine where it rested on my knee. His palm was warm against my skin, the simple touch more intimate than anything I'd experienced in years. I think you do know, he said softly. I think you feel it too. This connection, this realness. My breath caught in my throat. I should have pulled my hand away. I didn't. Why does this feel more real than anything I've ever audited out of my mind? I asked, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. He smiled, sad and knowing. Because it is real. Because they can make us deny our feelings, but they can't make them disappear. His fingers intertwined with mine, and something inside me broke open. A dam I hadn't known was holding back an ocean. I've never... I started, unable to finish. I know, he said simply. Neither have I. Not like this. We sat in silence for a long moment, hands clasped, the vast city sprawling below us, unaware of the seismic shift happening on this rooftop. We should go back, I finally said, though everything in me rebelled against the idea. Separately, 5 minutes apart. He nodded, but made no move to leave. Daniel, he said, my name like a prayer on his lips. Whatever happens, remember this moment. Remember that what you're feeling right now is yours, not something to be processed away. I nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in my throat. As we stood to leave, James suddenly tensed, gripping my hand tighter. If they ever find out about this, he whispered urgently, they'll send us both away. Me for sure, and you. You'd lose everything. Then he let go of my hand and disappeared into the shadows, leaving me alone with the night sky and a heart that felt simultaneously lighter and heavier than it ever had before. I waited the prescribed 5 minutes before following the path back to the access door, my mind racing with questions I had no answers for. Questions about myself, about the church, about the life I'd built and the one I suddenly, desperately wanted. As I reached for the door handle, a sound froze me in place. Footsteps on the stairs beyond. Someone was coming up. I stepped back into the shadows, heart pounding, as the door swung open. Senior Ethics Officer Weiland stepped onto the roof, his pale face ghostly in the moonlight. I held my breath, pressing myself against the wall, praying he wouldn't turn in my direction. He stood motionless for a long moment, scanning the rooftop. Then he spoke, his voice carrying clearly in the night air. I know you're up here, both of you. This is your only warning. Then he turned and went back through the door, closing it firmly behind him. I stayed frozen in place, cold sweat running down my back, the implications of his words sinking in like ice water through my veins. He knew, and in the church, knowledge was always power. I didn't sleep that night. Senior Ethics Officer Weiland's words echoed in my head as I lay rigid in my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. I know you're up here. Both of you, this is your only warning. What did he know exactly? Had he seen us on the roof? Had he seen James holding my hand? Or was he fishing, sensing something amiss but lacking proof? In the church, perception was reality. If Weiland suspected impropriety, it didn't matter whether evidence existed. The suspicion alone was enough to trigger an ethics investigation, hours of interrogation while hooked to an e-meter, with every needle jump and hesitation noted, categorized, and used to extract confessions. By morning, I'd made a decision. Whatever was happening between James and me had to stop. Now, before we both ended up declared suppressive persons and lost everything. I dressed mechanically for morning muster, pulling on the white shirt and black pants that had once felt like armor, protection against the chaos of the unenlightened world. Now they felt like a prison uniform. The dining hall was crowded when I arrived, the low hum of controlled conversation filling the air. I kept my eyes on my tray as I collected my precisely measured portions of eggs and fruit. I didn't look for him. I wouldn't look for him. Someone brushed past me in the serving line, close enough that our shoulders touched. He's watching, James whispered, so quietly I almost thought I'd imagined it. Don't react. I didn't. I maintained my neutral expression as I moved to my assigned table, took my assigned seat, and began my assigned breakfast. But inside, everything was churning. I risked one glance toward the supervisor's table. Weiland sat with his back to the wall, a position that allowed him to survey the entire room. His cold gray eyes moved methodically from table to table, but I felt them linger on me just a moment longer than the others. I didn't look for James again. Not at morning muster, not during study period, not during my first 3 auditing sessions. I threw myself into my work with an intensity that bordered on mania, as if I could audit away my own forbidden thoughts along with my subject's engrams. It worked for a while. Hours passed in a blur of dials and needles, of carefully modulated questions designed to provoke reactions I could measure and catalog. I was good at this, at being exactly what the church needed me to be. I'd spent my whole life perfecting it, until late afternoon, when I was headed to the tech room to recalibrate my e-meter. The hallway was empty, except for a lone figure walking toward me from the opposite direction. My heart rate spiked before my conscious mind even registered who it was. James. We were 20 feet apart, then 10. 5. As we passed each other, time seemed to slow. His eyes met mine for one breathless moment, and I saw everything there. Fear. Longing. Determination. A question that needed no words. I gave him the slightest nod. So subtle that if anyone had been watching, they would have seen nothing but 2 church members passing in a hallway. But between us, it was an earthquake. Then he was past me, and I was continuing on my way, and the world resumed its normal speed. Auditor Fletcher. I froze at the sound of Weiland's voice behind me. How long had he been there? What had he seen? Sir, I said, turning to face him, my expression carefully neutral. Come with me. No explanation, no room for refusal. I followed him through the maze of corridors to his office, a Spartan space with a desk, 2 chairs, and an e-meter between them. Standard setup. The sight of it should have been reassuring in its familiarity. Instead, my stomach nodded. Sit, he said, gesturing to the subject's chair. I did as instructed. The metal cans of the e-meter sat on the desk, waiting for me to pick them up. I didn't touch them. Is there a problem, sir? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Weiland studied me for a long moment, his face unreadable. I've been reviewing your performance records, Daniel. Not what I expected. I blinked. Yes, sir? You've always been exemplary, since you were a child. Perfect scores on all your exams. Perfect adherence to tech in your auditing sessions. Perfect compliance with regulations. He leaned forward slightly. Perfect, until recently. My mouth went dry. I'm not sure I understand, sir. Your last 3 subjects have reported feeling rushed during their sessions. Your supervisor noted that you seem distracted. Your roommate reports that you've been having trouble sleeping. His eyes narrowed. And then there's your interest in our Sacramento transfer. Trainee Ellery is in my evaluation group, I said automatically. I'm responsible for— I know exactly what you're responsible for, Wyland cut in, and I know what you're not responsible for. He pushed the e-meter cans toward me. Pick them up. My hands moved before my brain could process the danger. Years of conditioning, years of obedience. I wrapped my fingers around the cool metal cylinders and felt the slight tingle of electrical current. Wyland adjusted the dials, watching the needle. Your stats are down 15% this week. Why? A direct question. No room for evasion. I've been having trouble sleeping, sir, as you mentioned. The needle on the e-meter jumped wildly. A read. A big one. Wyland's mouth tightened. That's not the whole story, is it, Daniel? I'm not sure what you mean, sir. I think you do. He leaned back in his chair, studying me. I've known you since you were a child, Daniel. I supervised your first auditing session when you were 11 years old. I recommended you for advanced training when you were 16. I've watched you grow into one of our most promising young auditors. His voice had softened, taking on an almost paternal tone that was more frightening than his usual coldness, because it made me want to confess, to unburden myself, to trust him, which is why I'm concerned, he continued. You've never shown counterintention before, never had a problem with compliance, and now suddenly you're breaking curfew, missing meals, losing focus during sessions. He paused, and spending time with a known trouble case. The needle jumped again, betraying me. Trainee Ellery has a history of questioning the tech, Wyland said carefully. His previous org sent him here not for advancement, but for correction. Did you know that, Daniel? I swallowed hard. No, sir. He's been flagged for interbulation, creating disturbance and upset 3 times in the past year. He's on probation. 1 more violation, and he'll be assigned to the Rehabilitation Project Force. Wyland's eyes bored into mine. Or worse, declared. The implications were clear. James was already on thin ice, and I was being warned not to go down with him. I'm telling you this because I care about your future in the church. Wyland said, his voice almost gentle now. Whatever, confusion. Trainee Ellery has created in you. It can be handled. We can audit it out. Get you back on track. For a moment I wavered. The path he offered was so familiar, so safe. Submit to auditing. Let them find the aberrations in my thinking and process them away. Return to the perfect compliance that had defined my life until now. But then I saw James's face in my mind. The way he'd looked at me in that hallway. The feeling of his hand in mine on that rooftop. And I knew with sudden, terrible clarity that I didn't want to audit those feelings away. They were the only real thing I'd felt in years. I appreciate your concern, sir, I said carefully. If my performance has been substandard, I'll correct it immediately. Wyland watched me for a long moment, then nodded once. See that you do. He reached over and switched off the e-meter. You're dismissed. I replaced the cans on the desk and stood, hoping he couldn't see how badly my legs were shaking. And Daniel? He called as I reached the door. I meant what I said on the roof. That was your only warning. There won't be another. I nodded stiffly and left, feeling his eyes on my back all the way down the corridor. For the next 3 days, I was the perfect church member. I arrived early to every meal, every muster, every session. I audited with flawless technique. I filed immaculate reports. I spoke only when spoken to. I made myself invisible through visibility, hiding in plain sight by being exactly what they expected me to be. And I didn't look for James. Not once. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Harder than the 100-hour training sessions I'd endured as a teenager. Harder than the sleep deprivation drills designed to test our commitment to the tech. Harder than the endless memorization of thousands of pages of doctrine. Because now I knew what I was missing. Now I'd felt the electric current of genuine connection, of being seen, truly seen by another person. On the fourth day, as I was returning from my last session, I stopped at my locker to collect my study materials for the evening period. When I opened the metal door, a small slip of paper fluttered to the floor. I glanced quickly around the empty corridor before bending to pick it up. The message was in neat, controlled handwriting. Meet me where we sat the first time. Midnight, my heart hammered against my ribs. I should destroy the note. I should report it. I should do anything except what I was already planning to do. Meet him, against all reason, against all self-preservation. I tucked the paper into my pocket and closed my locker, feeling as though I'd just sealed my fate. The rest of the day passed with excruciating slowness. I went through the motions: dinner, evening study period, personal time, lights out, all while acutely aware of the note burning a hole in my pocket. At precisely 23:45, I slipped out of bed, already fully dressed under my blankets, and made my way silently to the door. My roommate's voice froze me in place. "Daniel?" I turned slowly. Tim was propped up on one elbow, watching me in the dim emergency lighting that was never fully extinguished. "Just getting some water," I said, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. Tim studied me for a long moment. We'd been roommates for 3 years, ever since we'd both qualified as Level 4 auditors. He wasn't a friend. The church discouraged close personal relationships, but he was the closest thing I had to one. "You've been different lately," he said quietly. I tensed. "Different how?" "I don't know." He frowned. "Just different. Wyland's been asking about you." A chill ran down my spine. What did he ask? "If you've been going out at night. If you've mentioned trainee Ellery." Tim's eyes were troubled. "Daniel, what's going on? Are you in some kind of trouble?" I should have reassured him. Should have told him everything was fine, that I was just stressed from the additional evaluation duties. Instead, I found myself asking, "Have you ever wondered if there's more than this, Tim? More than the tech, more than the church?" His eyes widened, and I immediately regretted the question. It was dangerous, the kind of question that could get us both in trouble. "Never," he said firmly. Then, lower, "And neither should you." I nodded, as if accepting his counsel. "You're right, I'm just tired. I'll get some water and come right back." He watched me for another long moment, then lay back down, turning his face to the wall. "I didn't see you leave," he murmured. "I was asleep." A gift, a small act of loyalty that could cost him if it ever came to light. I swallowed hard. "Thank you." Then I was out the door, moving silently through the darkened corridors, every sense heightened to detect any sound or movement that might signal danger. But the building was silent, the night staff minimal, and positioned at key checkpoints I knew how to avoid. The auditing room was dark when I arrived, the door locked as it should be after hours. I hesitated, wondering if I'd misunderstood the note. Then I noticed a faint glow coming from beneath the door, the standby light of an e-meter, left running. I tried the handle. It turned easily in my grip. James was sitting in the auditor's chair when I entered, the dim green glow of the e-meter's display casting strange shadows across his face. He didn't speak as I closed the door behind me, then crossed to take the subject's seat opposite him. For a long moment, we just looked at each other in the near darkness. All the carefully constructed walls I'd built over the past few days crumbled at the sight of him. "You came," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I shouldn't have. But you did." The corner of his mouth lifted in that almost smile that had haunted my dreams. "That's the choice that matters." My own words from the rooftop echoed back to me. "Wyland knows," I said quietly. "About us. About something, at least." James nodded. "He's had me in for questioning twice. Wanted to know why I transferred here, who I've been talking to." His eyes met mine. "Whether I've been breaking any rules." "What did you tell him?" "The truth, as much of it as I could, without putting either of us in danger." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "But he's watching us, Daniel, both of us. And he's just waiting for a reason to send me to RPF." The Rehabilitation Project Force, a program of hard labor, sleep deprivation, and intensive auditing designed to break down any resistance to the tech. People went in bright and questioning. They came out hollow-eyed and compliant. "Why did you ask me to come here?" I asked. "It's too dangerous." "Because I had to see you." He reached across the small space between us, his hand hovering just inches from mine. "Because I can't stop thinking about you. Because for the first time in my life, I feel real when I'm with you." I should have pulled away, should have left the room, reported to ethics, saved myself while I still could. Instead, I closed the distance between our hands, lacing my fingers through his. His sharp intake of breath was audible in the quiet room. "Daniel." "I know," I whispered. "I feel it too." We sat like that for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, hands joined across the e-meter, the forbidden intimacy of the contact sending waves of both terror and exhilaration through me. "What are we doing?" I finally asked. "I don't know." His thumb traced slow circles on the back of my hand. "I just know I can't stop. They'll catch us eventually. Wyland's already suspicious." "Then let's give him something to be suspicious about." Before I could process his words, James was moving, leaning across the space between us, his face inches from mine. I could feel his breath, warm against my lips. Time seemed to slow, to stretch like taffy between us. "Is this okay?" he whispered. I answered by closing the final distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that was both tentative and desperate. His hand came up to cup my face, fingers trembling against my cheek. The touch was electric, sending shivers down my spine. The kiss deepened, turned hungry. Years of suppressed emotion, of denied longing, of fear and isolation. All of it channeled into this one point of contact. His lips were warm, insistent against mine. I'd never felt anything like it. Never known such hunger could exist in me. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I felt altered on a fundamental level, as if something essential in me had shifted, rearranged itself into a new configuration. "I can't live like this anymore," James said, his voice raw. "Pretending, following their rules. Letting them tell me what to think, what to feel." His eyes locked with mine. "We could leave, Daniel, together." The words hit me like a physical blow. Leave the church? It was unthinkable. Everyone I knew was here. My entire life had been shaped by the tech, by the rigid structure of the organization. I had no identity outside of it. "Leave?" I echoed. "And go where? Do what?" "We'd be declared." The weight of that word hung between us. Declared suppressive persons. Cut off from all contact with anyone still in the church, which meant everyone I'd ever known. "Yes," he said simply. "We'd be declared, and then we'd be free." Free. The word my mother had promised me 20 years ago as we'd climbed those marble steps. Freedom through the tech, through auditing, through absolute compliance with the rigid structure of the church. But I'd never felt less free than I did now, trapped in a life that suddenly felt hollow, caught between the safety of everything I'd known and the terrifying possibility of something real. "I don't know if I can," I admitted, the words torn from somewhere deep inside me. James nodded, his eyes sad but understanding. "I know, and I'm not asking you to decide right now." He squeezed my hand. "But I am asking you to consider it. To think about what your life would be like outside these walls." The question itself felt like blasphemy, but once asked, it couldn't be unasked. The seed was planted. When would we go? The question surprised me as much as it seemed to surprise him. Hope flared in his eyes. "Soon. Before Wyland can build a case against either of us. I have some money saved. Not much, but enough to get us started somewhere new." "Where?" "I have a friend, a former member in Seattle. She got out 3 years ago. She said she'd help anyone else who wanted to leave." The fact that he'd maintained contact with a declared SP was itself an offense that could get him expelled. The risk he'd taken just to have an escape route stunned me. "I need time," I said, "to think about this. It's A lot. He nodded, lifting my hand to his lips and pressing a kiss to my knuckles that sent another shiver through me. 3 days, he said softly. Meet me at the delivery entrance at 5 a.m. on Saturday, before the first staff arrives. He searched my face. If you're not there, I'll understand. I'll go alone, and I won't contact you again. The thought of him vanishing from my life hit me with unexpected force. And if I am there? His smile was both radiant and sad. Then we walk out together, into whatever comes next. We kissed once more, deep and desperate, before slipping out of the auditing room separately. I went first, checking that the corridor was clear before signaling that it was safe for him to follow. At the junction where we had to part ways, him to the East Wing dormitories, me to the West, we paused for one brief moment. 3 days, he whispered. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Then he was gone, and I was alone in the dimly lit corridor, feeling as though I'd just jumped off a cliff and was still waiting to hit the ground. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. I went through the motions with mechanical precision, hyper-aware of every glance, every interaction. Balin summoned me once more, but the meeting was brief and seemingly routine. A review of my current cases, nothing more. Yet I felt his eyes on me constantly, watching, evaluating. I saw James only in group settings, at meals, at muster, during one training session where we were carefully assigned to opposite sides of the room. Each time, eyes would meet for the briefest moment, exchanging a silent message that no one else could read. Each time, my heart would race, my palms would sweat, and the e-meter needle would have jumped off the chart if I'd been holding the cans. At night, I lay awake, weighing impossible choices. Stay and lose the one real connection I'd ever felt. Go and lose everything else, my position, my purpose, everyone I'd ever known. My entire identity. On the third night, I didn't even pretend to sleep. I lay fully clothed under my blanket, watching the minutes tick by on my digital clock. At 4:30 a.m., I silently gathered the few personal items I could carry inconspicuously. My ID, the small amount of cash I was permitted to keep, a photo of my parents taken before they had divorced and my father had been declared. Tim stirred as I moved toward the door. Daniel, his voice was thick with sleep. I froze, heart pounding. Just getting some water, I said, the same lie I'd told 3 nights ago. He raised himself on one elbow, blinking in the dim light. With your backpack? I glanced down at the small pack I had slung over my shoulder, containing the few possessions I couldn't bear to leave behind. I have an early session, I improvised. Thought I'd get some study time in first. Tim's eyes cleared, sharpened. He looked at me for a long moment, then at the clock. Understanding dawned in his expression. You're leaving, he said. Not a question. I couldn't lie to him, not now. Yes. He sat up fully, running a hand through his short hair. With Ellery? My silence was answer enough. They'll declare you, he said quietly. You'll never be able to come back. Never talk to anyone here again, including me. I know. My voice cracked on the words. Tim closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were filled with a mixture of sadness and resignation. I should report this. I know that too. We stared at each other across the darkened room, years of shared space and cautious almost friendship hanging between us. Finally, he lay back down and turned his face to the wall. I'm asleep, he said softly. I don't hear anything. I don't see anything. And I won't wake up for another hour. Relief and gratitude washed over me. Thank you, Tim. Don't thank me. His voice was muffled. Just be happy out there, whatever that means. I slipped out the door and made my way through the silent corridors, taking a circuitous route to avoid the night staff positions. The delivery entrance was in the basement level, used for food shipments and other supplies. At that hour, it should be deserted. My heart hammered against my ribs as I descended the stairs to the basement. What if Wyland had discovered our plan? What if James had been caught? What if he had changed his mind and wasn't there at all? The basement corridor was dimly lit and smelled of cleaning supplies and the industrial kitchen nearby. I moved quietly past storerooms and maintenance closets, following the signs toward the delivery area. As I rounded the final corner, I saw him. James was sitting on a bench near the exit, a backpack similar to mine at his feet. He looked up as I approached, and the naked hope and relief in his expression made my breath catch. Neither of us spoke as I crossed to him. Words seemed inadequate for the magnitude of what we were considering. He simply moved over on the bench, making space for me beside him. I sat, our shoulders touching, and felt some of the terrible tension drain from my body. Outside, the sky was just beginning to lighten with the first hint of dawn. Soon, the earliest staff would arrive to begin breakfast preparations. Our window was closing. "You came," James finally said, echoing his words from the auditing room. "I'm here," I agreed, "but I don't know if I can." He nodded, no judgment in his eyes. "I know, it's okay if you change your mind, Daniel." I meant what I said. I'll understand. We sat in silence for another moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on both of us. "What's it like?" I asked suddenly. "Outside, I mean. I haven't been unescorted since I was 7 years old." His smile was sad, loud, confusing, full of people who don't understand the tech, who don't follow any kind of rational system. He turned to face me fully, and beautiful and free, full of choices. So many that it's terrifying sometimes. Full of feelings they haven't taught us to audit away. "Were you ever out? Before?" He nodded. "Until I was 12. My parents joined when I was 11. I still remember. Before." His eyes grew distant. "I remember going to a regular school, having friends who talked about regular things. I remember my mother laughing, really laughing, not the controlled acknowledgement they teach us here." He refocused on me. "What about you?" I shook my head. "Born in. Both my parents were members. My father was declared when I was 10. I don't know why. We never spoke about him after that." The memory still ached, even after all these years. "My mother is still in, at the flag headquarters in Florida." He took my hand, lacing our fingers together. The touch was both comforting and electrifying. "She won't be able to talk to you," he said gently, "if we leave. You know that, right?" I nodded, the reality of it a physical pain in my chest. "I know." We sat in silence again, watching the thin line of light beneath the exit door grow brighter as dawn approached. "It's time," James finally said. "We need to decide." He stood, shouldering his backpack, and held out his hand to me. "The first bus leaves the station at 5:30. If we miss it, we'll have to wait until 6, and by then they'll know we're gone." I stared at his outstretched hand, at the exit door beyond him, at the slice of unknown world visible in the narrow gap beneath it. Everything I'd ever known was on this side of that door. Everything I'd never experienced was on the other. I thought of Tim, giving me the gift of his silence. Of Wyland, watching with those cold gray eyes. Of my mother, who I might never speak to again. Of James, and the way his kiss had awakened something in me I hadn't known existed. "If you walk through that door," I said, standing and reaching for his hand, "I'm right behind you." His fingers closed around mine, warm and solid and real. Together, we moved toward the exit, our steps synchronized as if we'd been walking side by side for years instead of days. James reached for the handle and turned it slowly. The door swung open, revealing a loading dock, a narrow alley beyond it, and above that, a sky painted in shades of pink and gold by the rising sun. The dawn air was cool on my face, carrying scents I couldn't identify. The city, the world, freedom. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with it. James's hand tightened around mine. "Ready?" he asked quietly. I looked at him, at his hopeful eyes, at the future reflected in them. A future that could be ours, if we were brave enough to claim it. "Ready," I whispered.